Good morning. Every week our readings are taken from Rays of the One Light. These are weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by Swami Kriyananda. This week, the eternal now. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. When will I find God? Many devotees have asked this question because worldly goals require time, usually, for their fulfillment. We imagine time to be a factor on the spiritual path. And so it is, but only because we think it is. God is as much with us now as He ever will be. It's not that He who needs to come to us. We need to come to Him. And that process of coming is a matter of transforming our self-perception. In the Gospel of St. John, chapter 4, Jesus Christ says, "Say not ye, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh harvest. Behold, I say unto you, lift up your eyes, and look on the fields, for they are white already to harvest." There's a practical teaching in these words, apart from their statement that we have God already, and have only to realize that truth. Jesus is saying, lift up your eyes and look. To hold the eyes uplifted is the best position for meditation. For the seat of superconsciousness lies at a point midway between the eyebrows, in the frontal lobe of the brain, just behind that point. This point is known also as the Christ Center. By lifting up your eyes and concentrating there, you will find it easier to enter the state of ecstasy. That's why saints in every religion have often been observed during states of deep inner communion with their eyes uplifted, focused on the inner light, white, as Jesus said, already to harvest. The Bhagavad Gita goes further into this meditative teaching. In the 6th chapter it states, holding the spine firm, the neck and head erect and motionless, let the yogi focus his eyes at the starting place of the nose, the point between the eyebrows. Let not his gaze roam elsewhere. In meditation, tell yourself, I have Him already. I am alive forever in the divine light. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Morning, everyone. How is everybody?
Awake and ready.
Fabulous. There is Happy Father's Day, by the way, and Happy Divine Father's Day. We have some friends visiting us, and we were discussing last night Father's Day, and one of our friends is a teenager, and it reminded me of my own daughter. I asked her many years ago, or somebody asked her in my presence many years ago, what is a father good for? And she said, rides and money. We got a slightly better response last night, but I would say only slightly better, because our dear friend, she said, fathers are irritating, obnoxious, and funny. And he is my best friend and indispensable. Isn't that sweet? Fathers play an enormous role. We're in a very confused time socially, and it's a global thing. There's a lot of talk of LGBTQ going on. And what people are missing is the fact that God expresses in duality. He expresses in male energy and female energy. He expresses in heat and cold and up and down and pleasure and displeasure. You know, each one of us across many, 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 many incarnations have played every role. We've played the role of female, we've played the role of the male, we've played the role of the male transitioning into a female life and still kind of hanging back, or having, you know, there's just all kinds of things. And none of them are who we are. The whole point of the spiritual path is the discovery at the end of the day, not in asserting, this is who I am, and this is what... I mean, it's important that we respect each other. It's extraordinarily important that we respect each other, no matter what step a person is in the exploration of what's true in life. But at the end of the day, whatever our outer roles are and our outer exercise is in trying to explore, the discovery that we are none of those things, the discovery that we are joy, that we are boundless love, unconditioned by any outer circumstance, that we are in fact made of peace and harmony. The power is actually our nature, and that light and sound and wisdom are resident within us. And that's the call of the path, because at the end of the day, you know, it doesn't matter what role we've played, we put it down. Every one of us. And I don't care how committed we are to that role, we still put it down. In fact, the more committed we are, the more difficult it is to put it down. The topics today are lovely. They are peace, inner peace, and the eternal now. We've been on the path for some number of years now, very earnestly. And so we've had a chance to watch ourselves in relationship to the teachings. And the teachings tell us, you know, that when we get engaged in the world, when people get engaged in the world and get committedly engaged in the world, we start to take on qualities of worldliness. We take on restlessness. We take on desire. We take on a sense of superficiality and a relationship to the surface of life. And that these things cause us to feel less and less and less comfortable in our own skin. And that's the compelling story of life, is we're uncomfortable. We don't like ourselves very well. The distance between our daily experience, at the end of the day, you know, everybody wakes up with anticipation, or we wouldn't get up at all. Everybody wakes up with anticipation that today is going to yield the things that make me happy, the things that satisfy me. And for most of us, the distance between that anticipation in the morning and what we find at night is pretty vast. And if we take time, you know, most of us kind of, if you take time to reflect, you kind of go, huh, what happened? And what mostly happened is we filled our time with things that can't satisfy us. That's all. It's just that simple. Ganga Mata and I have, well, I'm going to speak for myself. Really wise. I'm not going to say anything that would get me in trouble particularly, but just I realize that speaking for myself is better. I've watched across the years, we're in, this path is a particular expression of the divine into the world at this time. And it has very particular qualities. Swami Kriyananda was told by, the founder of Ananda, was told by Paramahansa Yogananda, his guru, he said, your life will be one of intense activity and meditation. And really that's the hallmark of this path, and it's the hallmark of Ananda. Intense activity, intense service, and meditation. And I've watched across time how the compelling request and need for service, it's overwhelming in this world. Anybody who has any touch of wholeness inside, you're needed desperately to be carrying that out into the lives of others who are who can't find wholeness, who think that hating each other is where happiness comes from, who just are desperate for something meaningful and rich and powerful that will satisfy. But I watched, as I started to meditate, as I started to learn to meditate, I started to feel this great peace and this sense of connection with something that whenever I meditated was always there. And then the demand for service would rise. And so I would meditate more, right? And then the call to service would rise again. And I would meditate more. And the call to service would rise again. And it was this constant back and forth until I'd reach this point where I just couldn't hold it anymore. I'd kind of fall over. And I would find myself just empty. But what I've watched across the nearly 35 years now is every time I would do that, every time I would really hold myself in service and try and hold that, when I fell over, the next time I got up, it was farther and longer before I found I couldn't be in that space. I couldn't hold that. Jyotish and Devi, they were here last week, and it was beautiful. One of the things, they said many beautiful things, very inspiring. But one of the things that they said that it was so touching for everybody and a good reminder for myself, in 45 years of them serving this light, teaching tens of thousands of people to meditate, of being a part of Ananda as a global work, they have never once met anybody for whom meditation is easy. Think about that. Never once. Meditation is hard work, especially in this time when we've got this tremendous call to outer service. And what I watch across time, we're on the eve of doing the curative for being involved in the world, which is to take seclusion, to take time out to recalibrate and reset. But what I've watched is, as the service increases, even with deep meditation, what happens is this starts to win. And I start to find myself enmeshed in behavior patterns that are not particularly valuable. They're familiar, they're satisfying on the surface, but they don't enrich my life. And I find myself more and more increasingly committed to those. And even though I know the teachings very well, and even though I've had some very profound spiritual experiences, I still find that pattern creeps in and is still there. And so what I found across time is it's essential to go back. There's this very sweet story of a man, it's an American painter who had this, who the story is told about. I want to make sure I'm not missing anything that I had wanted to bring in. This American painter, and I can't remember, I think it was Whistler, but I can't remember. I looked in his biography and I couldn't find the story. So whoever it was, they were very famous at the time that this story takes place. But there was a time when they were a struggling artist, as is true of almost anybody who tries to find a way into economic stability through using art. And somebody had befriended him during those struggling years, and they developed a lifelong friendship. And at this particular point in time, it was his friend's birthday. And he just was so filled with gratitude for the support that had made the rest of his life possible that this artist went to his friend and he said, I would like to invite you to come over to my studio and take anything you find there for your own as my present to you. Any picture, anything at all. And the man came over and he spent just hours wandering through the studio. And then he left. And the artist went over and said, did you find something? And he was weeping. I said, oh yes. But then he looked around his house and he said, there's no place for it here. And the artist said, I have an idea. Do you want the painting? He said, oh yes. He said, let's do this. Let's take everything out of the house. They took everything out of the house. And they may have even given it a lick of paint at that point, I don't know. But then they took that painting and they put it in, and they found the perfect place for it. And then they came and they put the rest of the things back in the house, but they put it around that beautiful piece. And that's the key for all of us who are trying so desperately to connect with that eternal presence of Spirit that's always there for us. Joy is always there. Love is always there. The power of peace. It's the fabric of our own nature. But if we cover it up with these accretions, with these restless behaviors, we have no access to it. And so because of the nature of the world and because of the compelling story of the world, we get involved in it, we serve, and it starts to claim us. If we don't empty our house out and put the painting back up where it belongs, we can't fit it in. The call of meditation, the call of the spiritual life, is to regularly, morning and night, take time away from all the restless behaviors, to watch the breath, to begin to feel what happens when we're not at all compelled by the senses. When there is no storyline. It's funny, but there is no storyline. Did you know that? You don't have a life storyline. You make it up as you go along. And it seems so continuous and so compelling, and it feels like it's predestined, and we're trying to figure it out all along the way. There's a cute story of Swami Kriyananda. He was married at one point, and his in-laws were with he and his wife down at Disneyland. And they were Italian, very Italian, and they were on this ride. Pirates of the Caribbean maybe or something. But anyway, they were in a little boat, and the parents were in another boat, and they were going along this channel through the water. And he looked over to wave, because they were going this way, and he were coming this way, and they kind of were passing. And he looked over and waved, and the father had the steering wheel strongly in his hand. He says, "Not now, not now, I'm driving." The thing's on a track. And so is our life. Our life is on a track. And it's got, it's being guided. And we're so busy trying to steer this thing and manage it. But it has its own reality. I will say this. I have found that if you don't like the track your life is running on, if you're uncomfortable not only inwardly with the lack of connection, but you're uncomfortable with the outer responses of life to the energy that you're putting out. If you don't like the particular track your little boat is running on, there is actually something you can do. You can take seclusion. You can really take your hands completely off the wheel. You can get even out of that boat and then get back into the next boat that shows up. You don't know where that's going to go. In point of experience, in point of sharing, I remember many years ago, I came to the path. We all come to the path with all these accretions, all these odd behaviors and attitudes. And at this particular time, I'd moved to Ananda Village, and I was struggling. Everything in my life was really out of sorts. Every single thing. Did I mention every single thing in my life was out of sorts? Like everything? I had become an equal opportunity offender. There was nobody who wasn't mad at me. And that was my best shot. That was just as good as it looked. And I couldn't stand myself. And I remember, and I was building, I had a little daughter. I mean, it was just, life was very compelling at that point. There was no way I could take any time off. And I just couldn't stand that juxtaposition. So I thought, okay, these guys said, seek God first, everything else comes. I'm going to take this weekend. I got off work at 5 o'clock on Friday as a builder. I grabbed my stuff. I drove up to the seclusion retreat. I had a little cabin rented for Friday night and Saturday night. I knew I had to come back out on Sunday. And I just went, and I had my little bottles of juice and my water. And I'm just going to give these days to God. I'm just going to do my sadhana, my practice. And so I got there, and I got into this little cabin, lit my candle, and I just went outside and energized, came back in, sat down, set up my little asana pad, and I just meditated. And when I couldn't stand up anymore, couldn't do it anymore, I went back out and energized, I came back in. Some point in the middle of the night, I just fell over, and I just pulled the blanket over me. I got up in the morning, I went back out and energized, came back in and sat. For 2 days, I just sat at the altar. If I couldn't sit, I went to sleep. Nothing else happened. I did Kriya, Hongsa, energization, and Om technique, and prayed. I just sat in front of the candle. I came out Sunday morning, and I pulled into the village, and I went in to get my mail from the weekend, and it was just after Sunday service. It must have been like 10 minutes after Sunday service ended, 15. And as I'm coming out of the mailroom, I see coming up one of the people who was just supremely unhappy with me. Oh God, really? First thing? And they walked up and they said, "Oh, it is so good to see you. How are you?" Just this effusive kindness and love and appreciation. Gave me a big hug, said, "How are you doing? I hope you had a good weekend," etc. It's just out of the blue. I had a overdrawn check when I went in. I mean, my checking account was overdrawn. I came out, I swear to God, somehow it had cured itself. I wasn't there. I don't know how this happened, but I was in a different boat. Every single thing, I swear to you, every single thing that had been a problem and out of sorts and dysfunctional when I went into seclusion, when I came out, this was just 2 days, when I came out, had completely resolved itself. Seek God first, everything else comes. There's something eternally present behind this drama that's always trying to express itself in peace, in harmony, in joy, and in love. And if we don't take time to allow ourselves to rest away from the activity and the restlessness, we never tune into it. We never let it steer our boat. We never give ourselves the chance to experience the grace and blessings that are always there for us. Really, that's all. That's the end of the talk today. I'll end with a little bit of a reading, and then it's a great day. It's a great day to celebrate fathers. It's a great day to celebrate life. It's a great day to celebrate the presence of Spirit from deep inside ourselves. This is number 157. I'll append this just a little bit, very shortly, but in the autobiography of a yogi, in the chapter in an experience in cosmic consciousness, Yogananda goes into this state of samadhi. He goes into absolute union with Spirit. He comes out, and a few days later, he's asking his guru, "When will I find God?" And Sri Yukteswar says to him, he says, you just had this experience, what are you asking? And he says, I see. You're expecting God to be this venerable personage in an antiseptic corner of the universe. He says, ever new joy is the expression of the presence of God. And Yogananda reflects and he says, yes. In fact, I see that there's a dual expression of God's presence in my life. Whenever I go deep into meditation, I feel His presence, I feel His joy. But then, whenever I'm out in the world, and any question comes up before me on how to navigate, how my boat of life is going to go, should go, he says, I discover that whenever the joy of deep meditation resurfaces, I'm unerringly guided to the right decision in everything. 157. Keep my spiritual eye open forever. O spiritual eye, once opened, remain always open before me, that I may avoid every pitfall on my path and be led to the highway that leads to thy palace of peace. Give me answers to my every problem. We'll take and have a bit of music.
By Swami Kriyananda, simply entitled Peace.
Amen.
that soothe away